Hello to my human family. Today I've got on special for Christmas Eve, although we're recording this way before that. um, the roller derby queen, the one who queersplains the scene, everybody's dream, I guess. Uh, it's it's Callie Wright. Hello, Callie. Thank you so much for doing this.
It is Callie, right? And hello, happy tis I.
Tis you. Um, the easiest, the the well, first of all, how are you doing? I didn't even ask you that during the pre-thing.
Oh, it has been a very very hectic few days slash weeks. I've really started to go hard into doing freelance podcast editing, and I've been finding success with that and getting clients and getting a lot of work, and it's cool. It is stressful, and that I all of a sudden have a lot of stuff on my plate and I have a lot of stuff to do, and but it's good. It's good stress. It's like stress that's created by good things happening, and so I'm actually making something approaching adult level money doing podcasting, both mine and uh, doing podcasts for clients, which is kind of surreal. It's really cool.
That is cool. Yeah, it is cool. I mean, you doing something you love that is always, um, what is it? Find something you love, make that your living, and you'll hate it for the rest of your life because you have to do it. No, that's not.
Well, no, I was going to say because there's the saying of, find something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And that is complete horseshit.
Yes.
Podcasting is one of my favorite things in the world, but it is 100% work. It's work that I enjoy. It's work that I do gladly. And it's work that unless something significant changes in my life, I am very happy to do and I love doing. But it is most certainly very difficult work.
Well, this thing, I mean, I just fell into it, but it wound up, I wanted to do it right, so I'm winding up doing 10 hours on everybody, just to make sure I have some background for what I need, and I don't wind up using any of it usually, but I want to know who the person is first.
Sure.
And sometimes having to listen to them when they interviewed with someone who's a complete block, as I've been, and other things. Well, the usual question right off the bat is, who are you, what do you do, and why do you do it?
Gosh, that's a big question. So my name's Callie, and I make podcasts, both mine and other people's. And I play roller derby, and I like Star Trek a whole bunch. I am a non-binary trans person, which is a newer revelation, newer figuring out of who I am, which is cool. And in terms of why I do what I do, I feel like I have been very fortunate in that I have found the thing both that I love, that I feel like makes an actual difference for folks, and that I enjoy doing. And making my podcast, for one, because the way that trans people are portrayed in mainstream media is generally not good. It's not often us telling our own stories with us as the intended audience. And so the specific thing that I'm trying to do with my show is that, obviously anyone is welcome to listen to my show. But when I'm thinking about who my intended audience is queer and trans folks. And there aren't a lot of shows that are made that way. And the shows that are made that way are very different from mine. And they all do very important work. I want to be very clear and say that I'm not disparaging those folks, but I did most of those shows are pop culture reviews or discussion podcasts, interview podcasts, and many of them are very, very good. But a very tightly edited, personal narrative That's not something there's a ton of out there that's focused specifically on queer and trans folks. And so that's what I try to do. And I try to create space for folks and help them feel heard, and give people a sense of community. If they don't have a lot of people in their lives that they share these experiences with, they can at least like listen to the show and know that there are folks out there in the world who are going through the same stuff and who understand them and are coming from the same places they are in life. And in terms of doing stuff for other folks, that it kind of fills a lot of different needs that I have in a lot of different ways. One, I like working on shows that I think are doing cool things, like cool activist-y type stuff. At a very basic level, I just enjoy playing with audio. So like, even if it's something where the topic is not something that I'm super passionate about, I still like, getting audio that's kind of a puzzle to solve and figuring out, how do I help this person's message be as clear as it can be, whether it's a topic that I'm super passionate about or not. And I really enjoy like shaping sound and taking something that's like, like that's good, but not great, and then like making it great. And I'm just really into that. And it's cool to like be able to work from home. I sit at my desk in my house, and so I can take breaks and play with my puppy when I want to, and that kind of stuff. And it's just, it's really interesting. I don't know that there's ever been a time in my life where I seriously considered like, I'm going to be a business person and like run a business. Like, I imagined maybe at some point, like my podcast would grow enough that I could pay my bills with my podcast. And I'm not there yet. And if I never get there, that's okay. I still am paying a significant portion of my bills with my podcast, which is incredible. Like, a lot of people don't even get that. And so I'm very fortunate in that way. But like, what it comes down to is I want to make cool stories. I want people to feel seen and heard. I want people to feel less alone and more validated. And so that's why I do my show. And I'm also just like an audio nerd whose brain is just wired for sound related things. And I think that's why I enjoy doing stuff for other people so much.
The best I do over here is just a sound check at the beginning to make sure we're on the same level. Other than that, I don't worry about it too much. Queersplaining your podcast used to be the Atheist Manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
I know the story behind why you changed it, but why did you change it?
So there were a couple of things. So previous to, Queersplaining is a very tightly edited sort of personal narrative type show where what I do is typically I will interview someone for half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, sometimes even up to 2 hours. And then I'll take that and I will build a story out of it and cut it down to 20 minutes, half hour. And so it's not an interview style podcast where like you hear me asking questions and you hear the guest answering questions. And it's, it's not like a conversational interview type show, which is what it used to be.
Right.
And I got very interested in that style of podcasting because I started listening to a lot of shows and I really, really loved that format. And I wanted to make audio like that. And I tried doing a second podcast. Go ahead.
I was going to say the hourglass model.
Yeah, exactly. He's certainly, as far as I know, the inventor of that kind of audio story, and someone that I look up to as a role model. I know zero about him as a person. I don't know if he's a good person or a terrible person, but the way that he makes audio is the way that I want to make audio for sure. So, I got interested in that kind of storytelling, and for a very short time, I decided to make a second podcast where I was doing stories like that. And doing two podcasts, especially one of them being a narrative podcast, was a shit ton of work, like too much work. I could not hang. And so I stopped doing it for a while, but I still, I didn't lose my want to tell stories that way. And, I just got to a point where like I didn't I never put out anything under the Atheist Manifesto name that I didn't like or that I thought was like less than the best that I had to offer. It just wasn't as creatively fulfilling as I wanted it to be. And so I just started doing stories like that for Atheist Manifesto. And I realized that I hadn't really talked anything about religion in a very long time. And the format of the show had changed so much that the name just didn't really fit the content. And I thought that it made sense to rebrand for a name that more fit the content and that sort of reflected the stylistic change of, the way that I was making the show. And so, yeah, I think it was in February of this year, late February of this year, that I changed the name of the show and kind of made the format change permanent. And, every once in a while I'll do a show that's a slightly more interview style if I think it if I think it works that way. Kind of a subjective decision, but yeah, that's the story there.
Well, yeah, it would have had to have been February this last year because somewhere in there, because I suddenly couldn't find. I went to listen to the next Atheist Manifesto and it wasn't there, and I couldn't find it. It didn't know the change. But it's my birthday. So, strange places my brain has been going this month. So just hang with me a little bit. I will say the one thing, had I not done the interview, well, I do a thank you to everybody because everybody gets has done something, whether they know it or not, for me. In particular, your interview with me, and I had an interview with Jeremiah Traeger very soon after that. The way you put together the story I had to tell, we did talk for 2 hours, and you tightened it up to 20 minutes with a great narrative. And then having Jeremiah interview me as a straight interview, I decided this is one of the things I wanted to at least give a try, see if I was any good at. So the thank you on there is just, thank you for giving me a voice and making me feel like I could have one, which you very much
amazing. It literally never stops blowing my mind hearing that kind of stuff from folks. Because I was on the receiving end of that once, and like I know what a big deal it was to me. I know how much it meant to me, and I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't gotten that from one person in particular that turned out to not be that good of a person. But like I do have sort of owe my start to that person in some ways. So that's a little bit of a weird thing. Like, hey, like, thanks for helping me get to where I am. Also, you're a terrible person and I want nothing to do with you ever again. But like, in all seriousness, I do, like, I try to be that for folks because I know what it meant to me to have somebody else believe in me and want to, like, help my voice get out there. And so like, I try to be big on paying it forward, and like wherever I have the opportunity to help folks in the way that I've been helped, I always try to take that chance when I get to.
Even in music, that's one of the things I learned from our particular talk was about my former music partner. So, and as much as she's a pain in my ass, she did really push me and lent me her name for a long time. So, and I try and do that as much as possible for the kids around here. Well, everybody's a kid to me. I'm over 50. So you started out in electrical work, so it's a strange place from one to the other.
So it wasn't electrical work exactly. It was I was doing like high-end home theater and home automation installation type stuff.
Oh, okay.
And so like Yeah, and well, and I have a pretty eclectic work history because the only like formal education that I got was I went to a vocational high school for communications and broadcasting, so audio video type stuff, and I went to a an audio school like specifically for audio engineering. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, I mean, I mostly worked in retail for a while and Best Buy for quite some time, and then I got a job with this. Basically, we go into rich people's houses and install very high end audio video equipment, whole house audio, whole house video, home automation. So like control your lights and your shades and stuff from your smartphone kind of stuff.
yeah.
And I did that for quite some time, and then ended up losing that job over being trans. Um, it wasn't like I came out and my boss was like, "Yeah, I hate that you're fired." But it was just kind of more of a recognition of the fact that our client base was largely very conservative, and I would almost certainly not be welcome in their houses anymore after coming out. And so I kind of ended up having to quit that job, and then I worked in a call center doing internet and phone tech support for people, and I was there for 4 years until I got laid off, and that's kind of what gave me the shove out of the nest to go into really pushing to try to make my show viable as a way to try to pay the bills and getting into taking on freelance clients and stuff.
Is this you had the call center while you were doing the your podcast originally?
Yeah, I got the call center job right around the time that I released the very first episode of the Atheist Manifesto.
Oh, okay.
Um, and yeah, which is wild to think about. Um, and and then I got laid off from that job in February, and it was very soon after that that the rebrand happened.
Oh, okay. So everything, when things change, everything changes. Uh,
Yeah, I don't tend to move in small steps as kind of an overarching thing in my life. Not a baby steps kind of person, and not always by choice. Like a lot of times, I'm forced into taking big steps.
yeah, I understood. when when it's time, it's time. That's
Right.
um, or as I put it, I take forever to make a decision, and then when I do, I jump, and you cannot stop me.
Right.
Yeah. Um, can I ask a little bit about the coming out process for you? Because
Totally. Yeah.
um, you were doing you were living the high life while you were doing something that I assume you liked, from what I could hear you liked.
Yeah. I
uh,
did. Well, I didn't particularly enjoy the company that I worked for. I enjoyed the work.
yeah,
Thanks, put it that way. I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone unconditionally loves their employer who has a job. I had some pretty significant gripes with the guy that ran the company, but I did enjoy the work. It was neat, just like being able to be around high end audio and video equipment, especially the audio stuff, because I'm an audio nerd.
yeah,
And it was cool to like, you get into this piece of software and you do some programming, and then all of a sudden a thing happens in somebody's house. Like it's a neat thing. Um, but yeah, so I, I had the realization that I was trans, and I, started very slowly coming out to the folks in my life. I don't think there's anything about that part of my life that's particularly unique. It was basically just like I told one friend that I thought I could trust the most. And then I kind of, widened the circle by telling more and more folks as I felt more comfortable, and then kind of just like threw it out to the world when I was done with that process. And then, I had the obstacle to overcome at work because I knew, the clientele for the industry that I worked in are largely extraordinarily wealthy, usually very conservative folks. And so I came out to my boss and I offered to quit because I was like, this is a guy that's got 2 kids living in his sister's basement at the time. He's not a faceless corporation with billions of dollars. Like he's a guy trying to feed his family.
sure.
Um, And I wasn't trying to get in the way of that. I wasn't trying to turn him into an activist and make problems between him and his customers. And so it was like, yeah, like if you think this will be a problem, I'll quit and I'll hire somebody to replace me, and I'll just like go quietly because I don't want to cause problems for you. And he was like, no, like you're too valuable to lose. We'll figure it out. I just need some time, which like obviously I was fine with because I needed time too to figure out what the hell I was going to do. And basically just the time never came. We would keep scheduling meetings to talk about what our plan was going to be, and those meetings kept getting canceled because there was some fire that he had to put out with a client. And it got to the point where I was out and I was Callie to everyone in my life, but I was not at work anymore. And that was a very, very hard thing to do psychologically. And it went some dark places. Like the worst period of my life, mental health wise, was that time in my life. Maybe it's worth talking to a therapist about at some point, but I feel like there's maybe even some low grade trauma from that. Like maybe trauma is not the right word, but baggage for sure.
Oh yeah.
Just that constant state of being stressed out and worried, and like the pressure that comes with sort of like shifting back and forth between two identities every day. And I mean, this went on for almost a year. So it was a very long time of that. And, finally it came down to, I was like, look, if this doesn't happen, I am going to quit. And he was like, okay, well, let's make you the office manager. And so you can do all of the estimates and the quotes, and you can build all the equipment racks, and you can do all the programming for us to take out to the job sites. Right. And I was like, cool, like that works for me. And, we did that, and it was great for maybe a month. And then it was like, well, we got to put out this fire at a client's house. I need you to come out and do this one last thing. And that one last thing it was never going to be that one last thing. And so I was like, it's obvious this is not going to happen for me here. And so I'm just going to quit. And I gave him a month's notice. I got hired for the call center job, and it required an 8-week training. And so I got lots of, when they hired me on, they're like, training starts in 5 weeks. So my boss got 5 weeks notice, and so I left there. And like in the process of all of this, I had my legal name change done, all the paperwork and everything was Callie and all of that. So like I went to my new job as Callie. No one at that job had ever known me by another name, never known me by different pronouns, never known me as anyone other than the person I actually was. And like I said, that was right about the time that Atheist Manifesto started. And so that was kind of the end of my coming out process, because then it was, I can be who I really am 100% of the time, even at work. And I lucked into a place that was very accepting and supportive, and with very, very few exceptions. I was, I can think of maybe 2 or 3 times over the course of 4 years that I was made uncomfortable there. And when I say uncomfortable, it was uncomfortable. Like nobody was ever actively hateful or mean or anything like that. Like there were just some like uncomfortable moments. And I can hang with uncomfortable,
The one of the things you said during that struck me, because it's only starting to hit me now that everybody in your life is who's gonna take the walk with you at all becomes a de facto activist.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hadn't really considered it before. And some just weird shit that happened around, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a second. I was not prepared for this. There were things that nobody told me. If I had to make a list of things they don't tell you when you become trans, that everybody else is going to have to be trans with you, sort of.
Yeah. I had some really difficult and uncomfortable conversations with some of my friends, and it was never because they were bad friends. It was never because they were bad people and weren't supportive of me. Like a lot of it was just, you tell me you're trans, you tell me you gotta do all this transition stuff, and I'm like, if this is what you got to do to be happy, I am 100% there with you, but I have no idea what any of this means. And it's scary to me because I don't know what it means, right? And like I'm pissed at society for that. I'm not pissed at my friends for that. You know what I mean? Because like for most of my friends, like maybe they had met a trans person at one point in their life before, but as far as they knew, they had never like known a trans person, right? And so like they had no idea what to expect. They were like, are you going to go on hormones and become this completely different person? And like I didn't fucking know either. And so I had to answer. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't know either, and I'm a little nervous about it too. So like I don't blame you.
Yeah, I wrote a song like immediately after coming out, and it's called the title is "I'm Still Me," and I do not stand behind this song whatsoever. I'm not the same person I was when I came out, and I don't.
Yeah, and I think about that a lot. Like, is it actually because of the trans thing, or is it because of all of the baggage that comes with it? And like maybe it's both, you know. But I can't, I because I am most certainly not the same person I was 5 years ago. But like, who of us is the exact same person we were 5 years ago?
Oh no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true, and it's. I didn't expect to do activism, but I have nothing to lose by doing it, which is one of a privilege I have, thankfully. And but yeah, my thought process is not the same. It's not, none of it's the same, and it's just I've been going on, not even, I'm 10 months on hormones, for God's sakes. And I Christiane is not Christopher.
Right. Yeah, and again, I wonder like what of that is chemical and what of that, because like obviously I've been forced to do a lot of self exploration and I've been forced to do a lot of growing. A lot of it to figure out who I am, a lot of it to figure out how to navigate the world and how to navigate relationships as someone who does not any longer appear to be the typical average like cis white dude. Obviously, like the way the world perceives me is different, and so I had to adjust to that. So yeah, it's really weird, and thankfully, like I'm very, very fortunate to have a great community of friends and family and stuff. And so like I've definitely landed in a very good place. Like it wasn't the easiest to get there, but I am fortunate to say that I've landed in a good place. And I feel like the problems that I have and the struggles that I have are not really unique. I feel like I kind of have a lot of the same problems that a lot of other people do. I don't feel like I have any sort of existential crises happening anymore. Like I'm not in danger of starving, but I could be more financially stable. I don't hate myself, but I've got some things up on myself I'd like to work on. I feel like in terms of the comparison of like the general mental health of the world, I feel like I'm doing okay.
Well, the first time I ran into you, or not ran into you, saw you, I was moderating a chat on an international internet TV show, which we don't talk about now.
Right.
And yeah, I was one of the people with the wrenches and had to knock off all the people that who is this guy, which is like this is
right.
But then again, in the back of my brain is also going, there's a trans person on an internationally watched program here. This may be a possible
I
thing
do have to say, I absolutely. I do have to say that my favorite comment that has ever been made about me was made in the comments on the post of that video. Because in that video, I ended up arguing with a flat earther, which was not something I was prepared to do. Yes. Because I hadn't watched that show in quite some time, and I didn't know that was a thing they dealt with from time to time. And the first call that we get ends up being a flat earther. And so like we're arguing back and forth with this guy, And in the comments section, somebody said, "The lumberjack has been exposed as a globe curve hallucinator."
Yes.
And me being the lumberjack because I was wearing a flannel shirt. And what's really funny is how I found that, because I make it a habit to not read the comments because of the reasons that you said before. But how I found that was I got a random Facebook message one night from someone who wanted to talk to me about trans stuff, like actually a good faith conversation about trans stuff. And they had seen me on this show, and they sent me a screenshot of that video saying, "Hey, is this you? Because if it is, I have some questions I'd like to ask you." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And like I said, this person was not like, it was not a troll thing. They just legitimately wanted to make sure I was that person because they wanted to talk to me. And in the screenshot that they had taken to ask me that question was that comment. Like, they totally didn't do it on purpose. It just happened to be the comment that was on the screen under the picture. And that's how I saw that. And I was like, one, I am very happy to answer your trans questions for you. And two, you have given me a gift in bringing my attention to that comment, because that is gold.
that comment was left up too. It was, what are you going to do with it?
So good. I love it so much. I really was for a minute about changing all of my online names to Globe Curve Hallucinator. But I didn't want to do that thing where I define myself by the thing, especially because I have zero interest in actually debating with flat earth people. And I figured that name would signal me as a person who's ready for that debate. And I don't care. I mean, I care. That's not a conversation I'm going to have with random people on the internet.
Well, the funny part is when that particular show that happened, I was living with a Catholic person who was just starting to get into trans issues, and I made her watch this particular episode, and because I watched it 4 times, that's when I first I first friended you, but I never spoke to you. So one of those, okay, I have a trans person I can talk to when I need to. Because we talked on your own show about how long it took me to come out, just because even knowing that I had to at some point. So yeah, that's even liked in my videos. And yeah, see, now I'm getting self-conscious about my own whenever I talk about my own coming out. It's always the one thing do you find, because this is something I found for me, is when you describe coming out, is it different every time you describe it to somebody? Because something different is there.
I would say, gosh, that's hard. I mean, I want to say like kind of yes and kind of no, but I also feel like that's the most trite, like overused answer. I would say ish, but because I'm constantly learning about myself and constantly sort of getting new perspectives on where I was at that point in my life.
Yes.
And so for me, the story obviously doesn't change because what happened is what happened. But like the way that I think about and reflect those things does change from time to time, depending on where I'm at in life. But also, like, to a certain degree, coming out is not just a thing you do one time. Oftentimes coming out is something that you have to do often, like when you meet a new person for the first time, or, a constant thing that you have to do where, you meet someone and you say like, yeah, like these are my pronouns, and then they get them wrong. And then you have to explain why that's a bad thing. And you have to do that like over and over and over again. And like, that's kind of a coming out of its own. And so for me, it only changes in that I get new experiences that are kind of adjacent to coming out, or I get some new perspective that I hadn't necessarily had before. some way that I think differently about, because I recently just within the last month or so, came out as non-binary, and that was like something that I never would have expected.
That was the next part.
So now I've got, in terms of like making the announcement and like figuring out something concrete about myself, I kind of have 2 of those stories now. And really I've got 3, because, there's a whole story about figuring out my, like, who I'm attracted to and that kind of stuff too.
Sure.
And so, again, the story doesn't change, but the way that I think and reflect about it does, unless something new happens, in which case, obviously, more parts get added to the story because, I can talk about all of the things that helped me figure out that I was trans and, part of the reason why I thought I was a binary trans woman. And then, coming up on 5 years later, figuring out that that's not actually the whole of the story. And so that's like a whole other chapter of figuring things out. So kind of yes and kind of no.
Well, who was the first? Well, I'd assume your wife was the first person you came out to as non-binary.
Well, in that case, it wasn't even necessarily a coming out. It was more of a like, this is what's been on my mind and this is what I've been thinking about. And I think this might be a thing, but I'm not sure yet. That, she was definitely the first person that I presented that to. And I mean, my wife is amazing. And so it was never really, it was only met with like, cool. That's cool. And if you decide that you want to change pronouns, just let me know. And, that was, aside from thinking through like the reasons and stuff like that, I mean, my wife is amazing and I think she would love me regardless of who I am. And that's one of the reasons that I love her so much. Yeah. And so she was the first person that I started to have that conversation with. And she was also the first person that I asked to sort of try on they, them pronouns with, to just kind of like see how it felt.
And apparently it worked. So that's...
Yeah, I was kind of taken aback by it because I had said, because it's the thing that I tell to people all the time when they're like, I think I'm trans, but I don't know. It's like, well, try on the language and see how it feels. Like, have somebody use different pronouns for you, have somebody use a different name for you, even if it's just like for a day or for like an hour. Just like have somebody like act as if and see how that feels, right? And I tell people that all of the time. And I'm like, why can't I afford that to myself? And so I did. And she was doing this really cute thing that she does where she talks in what is supposedly our dog's voice. And it was something like, oh, they took me outside. And I was like, oh, she did the thing. And it felt good. And then and it was very much, I mean, I literally I kind of like jumped for a second. I was like, and then, once I realized that felt good, I went to a group of my roller derby teammates, like the folks that I'm kind of closest to on my team. And I just said like, hey, here's where I'm at. And I would like to try this on. So, the next couple of practices, if we could roll with this. And of course they were amazingly supportive because they're also amazing people. And, after a couple of days of kind of trying it on, I decided like, that's what feels right. So that's what is.
That is cool. And you brought it around to the subject we were saving for the best part, which is the roller derby. And I remember when you first got into that and how much you were talking about it. So tell the, well, I assume some of my audience at least is nice. What on earth? How did you get there?
Yeah, so what it came down to is that like I was working out a bunch to stay in shape, and that got boring. And I thought, if I want to stay in some semblance of a good physical shape, I should find a sport to play. Like I should find something that's fun instead of just going to the gym because the gym is boring. And then of course I had to think about like, well, which sports are trans inclusive? And that list is short. And then very randomly one night, and this was before I had gotten laid off from my old job. Uh, we had this big meeting of a bunch of our staff, and um, our manager, I can't remember, was it one of our managers or one of the other supervisors or whatever, was like, hey, like there's this like 70s and 80s roller skating night at this roller skating rink. Like you should come roller skating with us. And I think I knew like Celeste was busy that night and I didn't have anything going on. I was like, yeah, I'll go roller skating. Like that's fun. I haven't been roller skating since I was like 12. And I went, and I was surprised at how much muscle memory I had from roller skating. I was not good, but I was okay.
Yeah.
And there were some folks that were wearing like athletic gear and they were skating around like they knew what the hell they were doing. And I was like, I wonder if those folks play roller derby. And that like kind of planted the seed in my mind. And I posted something about roller skating on Facebook that night. And I got a couple of different messages from folks who are friends of mine that either played in the past or play now. And they're like, oh my God, you need to try roller derby. Like you really got to try it out. And so I looked it up and I found that the team that I play for has an open practice every Monday that anyone of any skill level can come to. And it's $5. And so I went, and, you know, they have gear that you can borrow and all of that sort of stuff. And I had already bought roller skates by the time because I was like, I really enjoy roller skating. And even if I don't end up playing derby, I think roller skating is a thing that I want that to be a thing in my life because it's really fun. And so like I had already bought skates, but like they had like all your pads and all that sort of stuff they had you could borrow. And so I just went just to like see what it was like. And I was terrified. It was really scary. A bunch of people I don't know, people who are very tough. You know, I know ostensibly I know that the culture of roller derby was supposed to be very inclusive and very affirming. But like I've been in lots of places that were supposed to be that way and turned out not to be. So like I didn't really know what to expect. And
that happens a lot.
Yeah, well, and actually what had happened to get me there was one night I went roller skating with a coworker, and there was somebody at the skating rink who kind of came over to me and was like, hey, so when are you going to try roller derby? And I was like, get out of my head, dude. Like, because I'd been thinking about trying it. And I was like, yeah, you know, I've actually been kind of thinking about trying it, but like, I don't know. And he's like, well, just like watching you skate, it looks like, you know, with some practice and some time, you could be good. And he pointed out someone else who was at the rink and said that she had been going for a while, and that like, if it was something I wanted to get into, that I should go talk to her. And so I did. My first roller derby friend, her name is Widget. She's amazing. I love her to pieces. And, you know, after talking to her for a while, I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm going to go do this. And I went, and I was not good at skating. I fell a lot. I had bruises, but like I had a really good time, and people were cool, and it was a great workout. And I was like, gosh, like I think this might be a thing for me. And so I kept going, and I kept going, and I kept going. And I eventually made the team after tryouts, and I played a whole bunch of games last season. And the culture is amazing, at least on my team. My team is a wonderful group of people, very accepting, very affirming, very encouraging and uplifting, but also very tough. You know, our team is, you know, out of 400 leagues in the world, we're ranked, I think, like 85 at the moment, which is really cool. And I love the sport. Like I love how aggressive it is. I love hitting. I love doing like stuff on my feet. And it's been just a sort of radically life altering thing for me. And it's really cool. It's really cool to not be the trans friend in the room. You know, like I'm just someone who showed up to play roller derby, you know, and like, I mean, I don't hide that I'm trans or anything like that, but that's not my primary relationship to roller derby. Like it's my primary relationship to so many things. And it's not that I don't like that being a thing. It's just nice to have an area in my life where it's not a thing. And so now I'm in a position of leadership on my team, which is nuts. And, you know, our season, we have our first scrimmage this coming Sunday, and I made the A-team roster for it, which I'm incredibly proud of because I've worked so hard.
Yay!
Thank you.
I'm very proud of you. You really worked hard. I know that.
I really have. And it's paid off. And I've made good friends, people that I genuinely love and care about, and who have made really good positive contributions to my life. And like, hopefully I've done the same for them too. And so, yeah, it's one of my favorite things. I love it so much.
This is when you said not being the trans friend in the room. That's a part that hit me. I'm like, I'm even amongst the queer folk, I am the trans friend,
Right.
because I don't know why, but the queer folk do not hang around. The trans people do not hang around with the queer folk, and I'm like, but that's my people's too.
Right. Right.
So, if if I would, if I could actually walk more than a block, I probably would try this.
I mean, it's very hard on your body. I expect to make it to maybe like 4 or 5 seasons before I retire. Yeah, I definitely don't have any illusions that this is going to be a very, very long term. Like I imagine that unless something radical changes in my life, I'll always be involved in one way or another.
Sure.
At some level of support, or like, maybe I'll decide to be a ref or something like that. But yeah, definitely, it's very, very hard on your body.
I can picture you as the cigar chomping coach on the sidelines. They're just
Yeah, yelling at people.
So now you've got a decent career doing what you love. Your recreation is doing what you love. You've got a wife you love. Is the life? Is it a life you love?
It legitimately is, honestly. Like I said, no, nothing is ever perfect. Like, obviously,
No.
I could have everything I want, and there would still be problems.
Sure.
But I am extraordinarily fortunate in that I'm making a serviceable income doing 2 things that I love, like my own podcast and helping other people make podcasts, which is just incredible to me. And obviously, I mean, there's baggage, that comes with that. Communication issues and figuring out what people want and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, staring at a computer screen is tough, and especially staring at a computer screen for 8 or 10 hours a day, like that can be tough. And so, it's not the life of luxury, which is fine. I don't even know that I would want a life of luxury. But like, if, the question is, do I lead a life that I love? The answer is unequivocally yes. With the caveats that, like anyone, I've got stuff I'm trying to work on about me and some things about my life that I'm trying to improve. But I am very happy with where I am and where I'm headed, for sure.
Well, absolutely. I think, and again, had you not interviewed me, I would not be interviewing you right now. So
It's amazing. So stoked about that. I absolutely, like, because my thing is, like, I obviously, like, as an atheist, I don't believe that anything is going to go on after I die. And so, like, assuming that I know what's coming when I die, like, I'm sure, I mean, obviously, like, you never know when something like that happens, but I'm just like, if I know I've got a minute to live and I'm asking myself, like, holy shit, is this worth it? Like, have I done things that I'm proud of? Have I made a dent in the universe? And I'm a person who's very fortunate to say that, like, I can answer that question with a very sure yes. And
yes.
it's so fucking cool. It blows my mind. And I just, like, I don't know, like I said, I know what it's meant for other people when they've done that for me. And so I just, like, I want to do as much of that for other folks as I can.
Well, you did, and before I start crying, I want to just say, because I will. I'm a very easy crier.
Oh, I am too. I legitimately have cried simply by looking at pictures of cute puppies. I have cried.
Oh, don't start.
I feel you.
Well, we're going just under an hour at this point, so I should just I have to do the YouTube prayer, which
The YouTube prayer, that's a thing?
Well, I call it the YouTube prayer because everybody does. Everybody has to do it, and it's like a ritual.
Okay.
And when we're asking for money, so it must be.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, you're talking like, like subscribe, thumbs up, leave a comment, that kind of thing.
Yeah, see, you could have done it just fine.
All right. So if you're watching, click the subscription button down below. Make sure to hit the bell so you get notifications when new videos come out. Leave a comment and and tell your friends.
And tell your friends. And I am so... And yes, that is the YouTube prayer, but I also have the last thing to say one thing I say to the people at the end is your voice matters, your life matters, and you matter.
Hell yeah. I love that.
Yeah, and I adore you, as you well know. So it's so...
Feeling is mutual, my friend.
I have one last question, just at the end here.
Yeah.
I keep sort of seeing a guitar behind you, and I'm not entirely sure that's what I'm seeing behind you.
It is. You're seeing several guitars behind me, actually.
What are you slinging?
So here, real quick, I'll show you. Actually, my headphones stretch, so So this is my metal guitar.
Yeah.
That's the guitar that I played in metal bands, which is an ESP LTD H1000, which is a very nice guitar.
Oh, nice.
Somebody had done something with the neck there and glued it back on, which is neat. We'll have... This is an Ibanez Artcore semi-hollow.
Oh. Well, no, you don't play professionally anymore. You have to send that to me. That's
Yeah. Well, I never played professionally. Like, I guess I got paid sometime, but that was usually just money for food and gas. And then the guitar that is actually, and I've got this like really generic, crappy acoustic guitar that is just a generic, crappy acoustic guitar. But the guitar that actually like really, really means something to me is this.
The Strat.
And this was my dad's guitar, and my uncle gave it to me after my dad died.
Oh, sweet.
It's just this. And you can see it's very old. It's very beat up. It's very well used. But it's a very, very nice guitar. It sounds amazing. It plays really well. And like I said, it's meaningful to me. We'd have to take a full 2 hours for me to give you context about my dad. But basically,
yeah.
Get back close to the mic so you can hear me. My dad never chose to be a part of my life. And when we met, things just didn't work out, long story short. But the real connection that we had is that he was a musician and I was a musician, and he recorded bands and I recorded bands. And so when he died, my uncle gave me his guitar, and that's just like, the one thing that like we were able to connect over, and the one thing that I sort of like feel like I maintain a connection to him after he died. And so that's why I keep that guitar around.
Well, it's not within range of me. I was going to show you my Ibanez purple, but you can see it all over my channel.
Yeah.
So. And my bandmate has like my mandolin and my Strat and my... Can I borrow this for... Yeah, sure. She's the one who introduced me to a room full of trans people, just, so... Because she knew she did.
Right.
This is my current bandmate is also trans because, yeah, I have a type.
Because it's contagious and you infected her. That's the only explanation, right?
Well, that must be it, except both of them were trans before I came out. So.
That's fair.
Anyways, let me let you go and have a wonderful time with your wife tonight. And
thanks so much, my friend. Thanks for taking the time. It was fun.
Oh, thank you for taking the time. This is the Christmas Eve special. Is you're the one I wanted to have on, and you said yes, and I'm eternally grateful to you. So,
Well, I'm always happy to do it.
All right, I will see you online, and talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
All right,
Bye bye.
I'm gonna